Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Will here with Schedule Fly, and I got Marshall Davis on the phone today. He is in Raleigh, and he's been on the podcast before. Last time we were sitting there. You and Angela are educating me on mezcal, so different times, man. Appreciate you taking some time today to kind of catch up and let me know what's happening with y'all.
Absolutely. The mezcal's still here, by the way. Maybe more so than it ever was.
Golly. I suppose people are maybe having a little bit more now than they're used to. Okay. So you've got you and Angela Salamanca are partners at Ex-Voto, which I know was, you've been trying to get open for a while. So we had that going on, and you've got the Mezcaleria and Centro and all that. What's the latest, man? I mean, like, what's happening with how close were you to opening Ex-Voto before this all went down?
We were really close. I mean, it's relatively speaking, because we felt like we were really close for a long time, but we were actually scheduling our meetings with the preliminary meetings with the health department and, doing walkthroughs and stuff like that. We were looking at about 3 weeks from when kind of everything started falling apart around here. So we would have been open arguably right now.
Unreal. And that's after delay after delay after delay after delay over all this time. And it was in a food hall in Durham, so that's obviously closed. That's out of your control. Are y'all, is everything just kind of, obviously that's put on hold. Do you have any sense of, is the landlord working with y'all, or had you even started paying rent, or what was going on with that?
We haven't started paying rent, but it's definitely coming shortly. We aren't exactly sure how it's all going to shake out, because everybody's kind of scrambling to figure out how to handle this situation. As tenants, we all want to. Well, I would say most of us want to hold off as long as we can as far as opening. Obviously, all of us want to not pay rent as long as we can, because we can't do any business. But I think the big hurdle, especially for spaces like food halls that are, absolutely gathering spaces, we're just concerned about how do we open at this point? Like, what does that look like? And then what are the ramifications of opening in any sort of, different way than a conventional grand opening of a food hall. Where that hall, and specifically, the vendors were curated for a specific reason, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was a lot of intention on the plate, and that this was a space where you would go in and actually have an experience. It wasn't built as a hub for takeout. And so if that is what we end up kind of having to do, at least in the beginning, it's a bummer for everybody, because most of our food, most of our menus are not written to be served that way. So it's going to take some work. We're going to have to figure out kind of what we can offer, because we definitely want to for everyone's first experience with this brand to be a positive one. So that's kind of the hurdle we're looking at right now. The circles that I've been running in, they've been saying maybe July, June or July, hopefully trying to get takeout going before that. But everything changes day to day, so we don't really know.
For something like that, where you were close to opening, but you weren't open, so did you have staff already that you had hired?
We did. We had some. So our chef has been on retainer for the entirety of this project, so we brought him on. It's almost been 2 years. Next month it'll be 2 years that we've been trying to get this thing going. So Angela's given our chef work over at Centro in the interim, but he quit a different job that he was doing, where he was making considerably more money. So we've been kind of taking care of him, splitting the difference for a while, and we had lined up staff, at least I'd say 80% of staff for Ex-Voto, And, we lost everybody because everybody lost everybody. Centro and Gallo, Pellon, everybody got laid off. We gave everybody 2 weeks of pay, even though we had closed the doors. And we tried to keep in communication with everyone the best we could. We cleaned out our walk-in, gave all of the produce to our staff, and that's kind of dormant.
Well, okay. So in the situation with Ex-Voto, I mean, are you able to? I want to get into the PPP and what's happening with the CARES Act and unemployment issues and things like that. But that's a little bit different than Centro or something that's been open for a while. What happens in that situation?
No, we are ineligible for any of that assistance because we weren't open yet, so we don't have any numbers to reference what aid would look like. So all of these businesses that didn't get open, there's pluses and minuses to it. The good thing is we aren't sitting on a whole bunch of product that we couldn't move or something like that. We didn't actually have a bunch of people on staff. They had the promise of a job. So for those people that were kind of holding off, it's unfortunate for them because they might not have been working for the past few weeks when they were looking for work with us, maybe months. And, they might have held off getting other work because they knew that they were about to start with us, and then this fell through. So those people have been affected. We've reached out to the ones that, continued contact to see if they were able to get unemployment through their previous work. And some of them have, at varying degrees. But, the whole unemployment thing here is a nightmare right now. They're overwhelmed, and most of our staff, or most of the people that I know in the industry haven't started getting paid out yet. So there's a lot of uncertainty there.
Oh, people. So they filed, but they haven't gotten paid yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the website was bogged down so much for those first few weeks that, employers were spending hours and hours in front of the computer trying to just process, and, the website would crash every 20, 30 seconds. So you'd have to start over for each employee. So, for a business, I was helping Angela with the Centro stuff, and, that staff is like 60 people, maybe 50 total versus, some of our friends that have 200-300 people on staff. It's like, it's taken a long time to even get that stuff processed. And once it's processed, a lot of people aren't seeing the money, or they're, the website says that they're in limbo. So, like I said, we're doing what we can, and we're reaching out and saying, hey, if there's anything we can help you with immediately, that's, not money, because we don't have any. If you need a place to stay, if you need food, we're all kind of doing little efforts like that.
So there's a lot of people that have, at this point, maybe it's been processed, but they're not seeing the money. So they don't have a job. They don't have any money coming in. They don't really know when it's going to come in. Now, when it does start coming in, one of the things I'm hearing, Marshall, I'm curious about this because, there's just so much information. That's why I'm trying to do these things and just trying to find out what I can from various people, what people are hearing, what people are actually seeing, the gap between those. Is it correct that they will be at like $950 a week?
That is the maximum.
That's the maximum, and that's based on, how does that calculated?
So my understanding is everyone that was laid off because of COVID, that they have access to $600 a week, guaranteed. And that started on the week of the 4th. People that I know that have been approved before that, some of them have not seen that money, but then there's also a $350 buffer that was the original unemployment max in North Carolina. And so when you applied initially, you would get up to $350 a week. And then this $600 was on top of that. So if you were making, well over, $950 a week, if you were making well over $350 a week, then you would be you would qualify for the 350 and you would be getting the 600 kind of no questions asked. So 950 a week, which for a lot of people, is a comfortable, place to be. Some people made less than that. Some people made more than that. But the overall consensus is that that's enough, definitely enough for people to hold on for a bit. But the problem is, not everybody's eligible for that, and not everybody's in the same situation to have access to that, the 350 buffer. Like if you hadn't been working for the past few weeks, like those folks we were talking about at Ex-Voto.
Yeah. Okay. So they're not okay. And then what about people that wind up getting the 950 or something close to that? That's through the end of July, I believe, if that's the current situation.
Right.
Do you and Angela and your team run into people that at whatever that is, like $24 an hour on a 40-hour week? Do you run into people that aren't going to want to come back because they were making?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big hurdle right now. So, our conversations kind of through the business owners that we've talked to is like, how do you incentivize that? There are people that, that need this work, that are restaurant people for life. They love it. It's what they do. They're heartbroken because they're not able to do it. And, those people are going to come back to work, whether or not they were making the same amount of money or more. Those people are going to be in line because they want those jobs. Because the truth of the matter is, not everybody's going to make it out of this, I don't think. I mean, I think it's safe to say that not everybody's going to make it out of this. And so I think we're going to see a portion of our workforce here locally that needs work. So I think you'll see a mixture. You'll see people that are comfortable kind of sitting back a little bit, and then you'll see people that see that money is, has a deadline, and they're going to want to get back to work to kind of guarantee a space in one of these kitchens or, front of houses that they like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a big challenge.
To your point, I mean, unfortunately, I agree. I don't think, there's going to be some number of restaurants that don't make it through. So whether it's there in Raleigh or anywhere in the country right now, if you're riding that, $950 a week wave through the end and thinking you're going to go get a job back after that, that could be myopic because, whereas in the past y'all have had a hard time finding and keeping good people because they're just, everybody was employed and it was just, there just weren't enough people to fill these jobs. That's probably going to change significantly.
It will.
Yeah.
I think the other challenge there, the other side of that sword is that, the style of business is going to change when people do reopen, at least temporarily, but maybe forever. And so, whereas a traditional restaurant like Centro that has, half of the staff is front of house, half is back of house, and front of house was relying on tip income. If we're doing a takeout scenario, the tips aren't going to be nearly what they were before. So you couldn't. I mean, there's no way to make an offer to a server that could match $950 a week. I mean, I just don't see it happening doing takeout unless you're just killing it, which nobody is around here because the idea is that people are staying at home. And so even with, even getting back into the kitchen, even kind of reopening these businesses, it's going to be operating at a fraction of the, speed that it was before. So I think you'll get your kitchen workers back first. And I think that most businesses will likely leverage their management in the front of house until they can staff up, which kind of leads you into the PPP loans and that kind of thing. It's really tricky business and it's super risky for a lot of business owners to take out more, to go into more debt, especially when they know how hard it's going to be to restaff.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a real tough one. You've got you're forced to close, and then the only way to really continue is to take out debt. The other part of that is you've got. Well, I'm curious what y'all are thinking in terms of planning, because there's just no way. I mean, before you could sort of get a sense based on previous volume, previous years, on a month to month, week to week, even day to day, like roughly what your volume would be, roughly what your revenue would be. Therefore, you can plan your labor accordingly. Now it's like, how do you even begin to plan for that? I mean, is it takeout for a while and then people are slowly coming back? Do people flood back because they just want to get out? There's just, what do y'all think? Like I sit around and think about, I'm like, I can't even imagine having to think about that. What do you and Angela talk about when you kind of revisit your business plan? Because you're kind of having to start from scratch almost, aren't you?
We are. And I mean, so we're literally like this week is kind of the first week that we're starting to sit down and kind of put our heads together to really figure out a reopening. For a while, we've been for the past few weeks, we've been spending it, cleaning up. And now it's time to look forward. So I think the obvious thing is, at least here, it's not going to be a flood back. They're not just going to say, okay, coast is clear, everybody back to normal. There's going to be limitations on how many people can be in a space. I think we've heard the number of like 20% of your capacity thrown around. And for a lot of small businesses, that's an impossible number to have. I mean, it's a silly number to have inside. I mean, that would be like 12 people at Centro.
Not sustainable.
What's that?
Not sustainable.
Not sustainable at all. And so, so most people, I think, are if they have closed their doors, they're looking at the option of takeout as the first wave of reopening. I think that for a lot of businesses, you have to reevaluate your menu for takeout, and you have to streamline, especially if you're a business like us that closed down completely. Now we've got to take the risk of bringing in product. So we need to be really wise about what we're bringing in and how we're utilizing it all. So really what we're doing is we're kind of looking at 8 ingredients and then saying, what can we do with these 8 ingredients? Like, we know that we need this, this, and this, because this is what the people want here. These are our top sellers. How can we diversify that to flesh out a menu versus before? I mean, in the building, we had 4 menus. We had a lunch menu, a dinner menu, a brunch menu, and the Gallo menu. So that's a ton of stuff to prep, which there's no way we're going to do that. It wouldn't be smart to reopen like that. So more than likely it would become one kind of collective menu, limited and, distilled down to the top 10 dishes that we do, something like that. We're also looking at like a weekly subscription kind of thing, kind of seeing how people are enjoying being at home or enjoying cooking more. Maybe we can spark that and kind of beef up our takeout and to-go offerings. So, we're looking at doing like a weekly dinner thing where you could pay a subscription and pick up, dinner for the family once a week or something like that. I mean, we're throwing all sorts of ideas around. Yeah. And right now the weather's so nice, and we've got that beautiful patio at Gallo Pellon, and it's such a waste. And we would love to have guests out there. So we're also considering, once some of these restrictions are lifted, to maybe utilizing the space at Gallo Pellon during the day when it's normally not open, and bringing guests in to have lunch on the patio if we're allowed to, things like that.
Yeah, well, I love the subscription idea. That's really cool. I mean, if you just try to find any kind of little silver linings that may come from this, the being forced to get creative because of necessity could result in something you never would have thought of or done before that winds up being, a really successful idea. Something like a subscription is really cool. If you can sign up people that are paying on a recurring basis like that, you've got a little bit more of a predictable revenue stream. So, and y'all are y'all being you, Angela, your peers in Raleigh, your peers across the country that own and run independent restaurants are a very, collectively a very creative group. So I'm hearing all kinds of really, just really fantastic ideas of things that y'all can do going forward. Who knows when we start testing them? But I love the way that y'all are, trying to come up with things that are realistic. Because there's some folks I think that are, unfortunately, I think that are thinking that things are going to go back, to normal sooner rather than later. I think that's a tough path to consider that.
Right. I don't see any reason to believe that right now for us. And we're a very optimistic bunch. But we have to be realistic, and our number one priority right now is getting people back to work. And so, however we can do that on whatever scale, we've got people that want to come back to work with us. I'm sure we'll lose some people. Some people that I talk to are, reevaluating all sorts of things, like they maybe want to go into a different line of work or something like that, or they've gotten jobs already in other fields because there's a shortage of workers in grocery stores and
sure.
These big box shops and stuff like that. So I've seen some people just pivot. I'm a lifer, so we got to figure this out. And I think that there are avenues. I think that the trouble is we're so emotionally invested in our crew that we want everybody to come back to work. And I think that the truth is it will be 6 months before we're able to, bring back those type of numbers. Unless something, miraculous happens and we're able to really get back to our full capacity. We just can't afford. I mean, doing a weekly subscription or doing takeout, you're still looking at for many of us, looking at like a 60% decrease in sales, even with that stuff.
Even with that, you're still at 60. Okay. Yeah. What about, you can talk about your specific situation there in Raleigh, or just what you're seeing generally. I'm curious how landlords are handling this. Clearly, y'all have got to be able to sustain some kind of a model to keep the space. And of course, if they're not being flexible, then who's going to fill all these spaces? There's hundreds of thousands of independent restaurants across the country. And of course, then the landlord's got to deal with the mortgage holder. What are you seeing on that front, Marshall?
So for us, Angela owns the building.
That's right. I forgot about that. She does.
So
yeah,
we're fortunate in that.
Yeah.
She still owes herself.
Yeah.
She's still paying for it, but they've offered some banks around here and across the nation, are offering, interest only payments or, a 2 or 3 month deferral and things like that, which help. Some landlords are completely forgiving and they're feeling generous, and they know that kicking someone out in the middle of this, it's going to be impossible to fill that space. Some of the ones that are less thoughtful, maybe, we have heard of, some landlords sticking it to people and saying they got to pay. Fortunately, no one in our kind of circle that I've heard of has hit anything that they feel like they can't get around. But again, we'll find out when everything shakes out in the end. I know that for housing, a lot of our folks have reached out and said that that they're okay, that their landlords are forgiving or giving them 1 month free or something like that. But again, once this aid kicks in, if people have the 600 to 950, they should be fine wherever they are.
How about the PPP process in terms of, I've heard a lot of different things about, depending on, if you work with one of the large national banks, people have had a hard time even getting approved or not even approved, had a hard time even just getting the paperwork done. Some smaller community banks have been real helpful. What have y'all seen?
We're fortunate that we've got a really good relationship with our bank, and we had just done Ex-Voto through this bank. And
do you mind sharing what bank it is?
North State Bank.
Oh, yeah, that's our bank. Yeah, we like them a lot, whole lot.
Yeah,
Very good bank.
So we had done the loan for Ex-Voto through North State, and then we switched everything over. Centro and Gallo, Pellon, all of that stuff got switched over to North State. So, they owed us one. I mean, they were looking out for us too, and so we've been approved, from my understanding. But not without some headache. There was things. It was a really convoluted application process. It was really difficult for people to get through, and a lot of these small business loans are just stacks and stacks of paperwork. They're so difficult and so dense.
Yeah.
Especially for restaurant people that aren't used to reading all the legal stuff like that. And so we had a few snags in our first application, but from my understanding, everything's been corrected and we've got the offer. We still have to decide if it makes sense for us to take it, because there's still uncertainty about the forgiveness side of it. It's just not clear, exactly what you need to get forgiven. And if we take on this added debt, and then for some reason we hit a snag, it could put us right back kind of where we were, which would not be a good thing, especially trying to open a brand new, venture as well.
Sure. Okay, so you're still trying to make that decision, okay. I think I heard this morning that did you get a PLP number? I guess you didn't if you haven't decided yet.
No, and Angel is handling most of that. We haven't had our meetings yet today, so okay. I'm not sure kind of where things have landed. But when we met on Friday, that was when I found out that we had been approved, but for the wrong amount of money, because we had done the kind of the math on how it's calculated incorrectly, and so we resubmitted the math. And I believe that they were able to kind of push it back to the front of the line instead of sticking us in the tail end. But we've got friends here in town who still haven't even gotten offered the paperwork to start the process from their banks. A lot of people are having trouble.
Yeah, I would encourage folks that are having that issue and spread the word. You can find banks in other parts of the country that are small community banks that, by nature of technology now, you don't necessarily have to have a local bank. It certainly helps, especially when you have one like North State that's there and you can have a, eye-to-eye handshake relationship with people. But, I'll tell you, like yesterday I spoke with Brett Oliveria from Sup Dogs down in Greenville and Chapel Hill, and he works with Wells Fargo and just couldn't get anywhere with some of the other banks. So he literally found a community bank in Oklahoma. He found it on Twitter. Some CFO of a community bank in Oklahoma had responded on Twitter to some person that Brett was following that was putting out a lot of content about PPP loans. And I don't know. Anyway, so Brett contacted the guy and said, I'm in North Carolina. Can you help me? The guy said, I sure can. So just for those of you that are, kind of banging your head against the wall with your bank, there's just look around. There's other opportunities out there, banks that are maybe not having to deal with as much volume, that are smaller, that may be able to help you.
That's really helpful. I wasn't aware of that. And I know of a few close friends that have been posting specifically about the Wells Fargo issue.
Yeah.
And so I'll as soon as we're, done with this conversation, I'm going to reach out to them and just make sure that they're aware of that, because that can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And if they, if they want to reach out to me, I can connect anybody with Brett. I can't remember the name of the bank. I don't even know if I think I may have failed to even ask him but it was on a podcast I did yesterday with him. But Brett's a great guy. He's really helpful. I'm sure he'd be very happy to help, not only with that, but anything else he learned, through going through the process. And, but he was real pleased with what's been happening since he connected with that bank. So
good.
Maybe there's some, other opportunities out there. And, because the Wells thing is not going to change, unfortunately, I don't think. He even said the guy who's his banker there, he's loved Wells for all this time, and many people do. He's been a good bank for him, but his banker lives 2 doors down the street, and he said, "It's this above my pay grade, man. I can't help you. Like this, nothing I can do." Such a big organization, and so much that has to be done for that to get done. So this is where community banks really shine, and where they have the, a big advantage in their value proposition, and being a little bit more nimble and flexible. And one of the things too that the banks are dealing with right now, which I know is slowing the process, is they have to, once they give you what's called a PLP number where your loan's approved, they have to give you funding within 10 days. And one of the things that's slowing them down right now is they want to make sure they're not, it's just so convoluted, this whole thing, and if they don't get the money to you in 10 days, and they could lose the government guarantee. So the banks are kind of sitting on this going, all right, if we don't get this right, we're going to sit on all this debt that has no government guarantee that we're not making any money on. So I think that's causing a lot of the problems with this being slow. At least that's what one of my banker buddies was telling me this morning. So
right, and I mean the way that it's written, there's dates kind of in there that are talking about if by this date you are at this percentage of work again, and everybody's like, well, that's all well and good if things don't change right now. Like we can plan towards that date, but if things change more, now we're locked into something that we're not sure that we can deliver on. It's very tricky.
Yeah, there's just so many parts of this that are so complicated, man. Well, hey, Marshall, one more thing I want to ask you about is I saw, we were talking before we started recording, you've got this phenomenal looking home that you and your dad designed there in Raleigh, and I mean, it's like a landmark place. It's really cool. I've seen it. I didn't know it was yours, but one thing I saw on your Instagram this morning was a bunch of signs in your yard. You want to talk about that? What that's about?
Yeah. So in the first week, that really depressing week when everybody kind of went home and we deep cleaned our bar and shut the doors, we started to think about kind of how can we help. And, there's a lot of people in this industry that are immigrant workers that are a huge part of the restaurant. I mean, well, many industries, but definitely the restaurant industry across the nation. And we realized that there's a lot of people that aren't eligible for this government assistance. And we know, that they're, in many cases, these people are the core of restaurant work. They're dishwashers, they're bussers, they're, some front of house, a lot of kitchen workers, and not just undocumented folks, people that are in the application process with their, with visas or citizenship. And there's a lot of tangled mess involved in that, in this country, where people are nervous about, asking for government assistance, because they'll get bumped from whatever list they're on, whatever space in line they were. And so we just realized there was a bunch of people that needed help. So I started up a little fundraising campaign called All Hands, and here All Hands Raleigh. But the idea was that if it was successful around here, that we could do an All Hands Durham, All Hands Chapel Hill, etc. And started by doing some T-shirts, like a lot of people are doing, just to raise money. I partnered with a company out of Durham called Humbly Made, and
what are they called?
Humble Made brand.
Humble. Okay, got it.
Yeah, he's got a clothing line, really cool stuff, and he's a friend of a friend, and he said that he would print us the shirts at cost so that we can retain as much as we can. And then I partnered with Alpha Graphics here in downtown Raleigh, and they've printed these yard signs for us. And so that's the campaign that you saw this morning. Since we can't gather, normally, we rally up, we get everybody together downtown, we speak. But since we can't do that, I'm having people sponsor yard signs. And since I've got kind of a landmark house with a lot of traffic that goes by, the idea is to fill the yard with hundreds of these signs, and just draw more attention to the fundraising effort and see if we can get some money. There's a few outlets for it here in North Carolina. There's Siembra NC, and there's El Pueblo. that are trying to work on kind of whittling out the restaurant worker part of this. Those institutions are already, those nonprofits are already, connected to these communities, but not specifically in a restaurant way. So they're working with me trying to figure out how to get this money allocated. But yeah, we've had some good success so far. And the campaign will be running at least through the end of the month.
So how do you, whatever amount of money you raise, how do you distribute that? And I guess that's what you were just referring to. I mean, how does somebody apply, and how do you decide how much they get? Is it
right? So we're kind of basing it off of the model for that Triangle Restaurant Workers Relief Fund that then became the North Carolina Restaurant Workers Relief Fund. That's on the nonprofit. So, they have to organize that, but it would basically be the same application. You would say where you worked, you would say what you need assistance with, and then there's, kind of a raffle of, being analyzed, and, we would offer grants using this money to help pay some bills and things like that. The Triangle Restaurant Workers Relief Fund, I think that grant maxed out at around $500. We haven't been able to bring in money anywhere close to being able to offer that to everybody. But hopefully, if this grows, we'd be able to offer something like that. That's the plan right now, and a lot of it's still being figured out. But it would start here in the Triangle, and then would flesh out to kind of the state as a whole.
Well, I'm stoked, man. I bought my shirt. I can't wait to sport that thing around my house, I guess, for now. But I mean, but where do people go that hear this and say, "I'm in. I want to help these folks"? What do they do?
Right now, it's a tiny operation, so we're working off of Instagram, and then the handle is just All Hands Raleigh. And you go there, and there's a little Shopify store, and you can click on the link in the bio there, and you can pick up some shirts. You can sponsor some signs, and you can write me directly if there's, if there's another contribution that you'd like to make. Other people have reached out with all sorts of creative ideas. All the chefs and everybody is saying, we want to do a big dinner, and then they say, oh, well, but we can't. Because of this. So I think once the restrictions kind of lighten up, the idea of this campaign we'll be able to get much bigger contributions, because we'll be able to do more events and things like that. So just follow us on Instagram and kind of see where we go.
Okay, sounds good. So All Hands Raleigh. So check that out, y'all. And it could be something that you guys could, if you get something that's replicatable and tight, you could, not just North Carolina, but this could spread all over the country, kind of like Ben's friends,
Exactly. I mean, there's some states have had, they've had a lot more success with this, and they've been able to kind of fold in some of these folks into the general kind of relief efforts. The North Carolina fund that was created, there were no stipulations on kind of eligibility as far as that goes, other than that you were working in the industry. And so, it's going to take kind of outside donations and stuff. We won't be able to get that money necessarily from the government here in North Carolina, but tons of people feel the cause and just love our restaurant scene and want to see everybody make it out.
Well, one last thing I want to ask. Do you still have, I asked for like 20 minutes, and now I've doubled that. Do you got 5 more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. The last thing I want to ask you about is your thoughts on whether North Carolina should open up temporarily the ability for restaurants and bars to serve alcohol to go. And I ask that because Virginia's doing that, South Carolina's doing that, a lot of states are doing that, and that's such a high margin offering. We aren't doing that. What are your thoughts?
We're missing it completely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agree.
it would be a huge revenue stream. People want it. Everybody's trying to do these mixers and sell that, and I'm not sure how successful people are being. I mean, I see them out there, on social media, that people are buying, a painkiller base, and then they're adding their own rum at home, and that's awesome. I mean, it's everything that we can do, but if they would just allow us to sell liquor, I mean, that's what keeps these businesses alive. I mean, and I think that there's responsible ways to do it. We've got, I know at Gallo Pellon, I have like 100 permits for premixes of things for, parties and stuff where we could fully batch a cocktail and it's exactly like you would have it in the restaurant, and it's delicious and easy. And, you can offer those things at a discounted rate, breaking it down to like $5 a cocktail. And, it's a good value for the person that loves those drinks and wants to have them at home. And it's still a good margin for us at the bar. I mean, I hope that they wise up, but this state is just antiquated when it comes to that stuff. And I doubt that it will happen. If it does, it would be fantastic.
Why is it so antiquated, Mark? What's the problem? Because you're talking about, okay, number one, like if you're a politician, you go, well, if we do this, we get a lot of people back at work because all of a sudden bartenders can come back to work. That's a plus. Those are voters. You get tax revenue, lots of tax revenue that comes in from that. What's the holdup? I don't get it.
I think honestly, from my 7 or 8 years in the bar business, it seems like the people just don't want to do anything different. That they're not even necessarily having the thought process of, could this be a good thing? So many systems, even just special ordering liquor in the state. When we opened Gallo in 2015, we had started trying to amass a mezcal selection. And we were the only mezcal bar in North Carolina, and it was, such an uphill battle just getting those spirits into the state, whereas other states, it's easy peasy. And it was all just paperwork. It was just, 2 or 3 documents that people had to fill out, and you just couldn't get people to do the job. And there was no incentive for them. They could push the button on the computer and bring a pallet of, Jack Daniels in, or they could fill out a document to bring in 12 bottles of something special, and they just wouldn't do it. And you're getting the same tax out of each bottle, whether it's mezcal or whether it's, a bottle of Jack. And so I never understood why. We tried to be as friendly and still do try to be as friendly as we can with folks over at the ABC here. It just, everybody kind of points fingers in a circle, and you just never get an answer. I don't know why. I think we've got a lot of people that have been in these positions for a really long time, and they're just on cruise control. I don't think that they want to mess with that.
Who could help push that forward? Do you have to go to the ABC board? Do you go to Governor Cooper? I'm sure there's a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of individuals and organizations that are trying to push this. Where do you go?
I honestly, I do not know the answer to that. I've seen a petition that went around. I know that Sean over at Kingfisher had kind of done up a letter that you could kind of add your signature to, campaigning for that. I don't know. Honestly, when it was brought up to me in the beginning, I thought it was so far-fetched because of my experience here that, I just went back to, how do we sell tacos?
Yeah,
I know we can sell tacos.
There you go. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I was really surprised when I heard that. That was another thing Brett told me yesterday. I couldn't believe. South Carolina's doing it. Like, oh my jeez, man. Like, it's not like it's it's not some crazy, just out there idea. It's like would help a lot of businesses and people and the state right now. Do it responsibly and do it for a short period of time, but good grief. Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. I still drive to South Carolina to buy alcohol sometimes for my home bar because, it's privatized there. And so, people can offer better deals. They can curate, have different spirits and all that stuff. And it's just it's 3 hours away and it's a totally different world. I don't know why things are so old timey here in North Carolina. Hopefully they will eventually change. I mean, we've seen change in the past 5 years. We've seen some things relax, but I mean, at this pace, hopefully I'll be retired by the time.
It's not through lack of Herculean effort by a lot of people to get things to change. Well, okay, man. Well, listen, if you're listening, if you're in North Carolina, just, I don't know, call your local, call somebody, call the governor's office, call the ABC. The more noise, the more likely that maybe something will happen. I don't know. I wouldn't hold out hope like you said, but gosh knows it's a win for everybody involved. The consumer who's cooped up at home and, would love to support local bars and restaurants, the bartenders, the restaurants themselves, the landlords who, there's this chain, and then the tax revenue. Good grief. All right, man. Well, listen, I'm going to let you roll. Tell Angela and everybody I said hello. We love y'all. Y'all are awesome. And as you know, man, anytime, anything I can do, always happy to help.
Absolutely. I'll throw one thing in there, just food for thought on this North Carolina thing. They did offer, I don't know if you've heard about this, but they offered to buy back your alcohol. Have you heard about this?
No.
So, people were saying, like, can we sell back? Because a lot of businesses, they're placing tens of thousands of dollars on the line every week with their liquor orders. And a lot of people had stocked up, heavily before this thing and are sitting on thousands and thousands of dollars of product. And they asked if they could sell back the liquor to the state. And finally the state approved that. But, you pay $3.75 in tax on top of the bottle price for bars and restaurants here in North Carolina. And you pay $8, I believe, for a bigger bottle for the handles. None of that money comes back. So they offer you this, you can sell your bottles back, but then when you buy them back, you pay double the tax. So,
or when somebody else buys them, so they're getting double the tax with no. That's fascinating. Okay, well, It's an option.
Right.
All right, man. Thanks, Marshall. Appreciate it, man, very much.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right. See you.